Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I am filming indoors because it's raining. Today it's been raining all week and I am going to go over, I think it was 15 priority books of 2025. This is a video that I recorded about a year ago, talking about my priorities for this year. I'm gonna start with all of the books that I did read. I don't know how many they are. I just kind of have my list here. And then I will go into the books that I did not read, but I plan to read next year. So 2026 is gonna be books that are priorities for me. And then I have a couple at the end that I'm no longer very interested in reading. Let's just get started with the Trouble with Peace. So this one is one that I have finished, and it actually was like a combination of two because I actually said that I wanted to read The Wisdom of Crowds by the end of 2025, which at the time included also reading and finishing The Troll with Peace. And I actually did complete this trilogy during 2025, which I'm really excited for. The Troll with Peace, this is book 2 in the Age of Madness trilogy, was for sure my favorite of the trilogy. I also liked book 3, but I was very disappointed with some things that were, in my opinion, left open in terms of how this series fits with the rest of Abercrombie's First Law world. I made a long video talking about these, so I will just point you to that. Quick summary. I loved like the character development that we got in this story. Some of the plot points were completely unexpected for me. That is something that I always get wrong with Abercrombie books. I can always expect him to surprise me, and he definitely did. We do follow a lot of I mean, obviously the favorites from book 1 and some new characters also. I had some theories that were completely wrong, which I am a bit sad because I think the story would have finished so much better if those theories had been correct. But anyways, this was a bomb of a trilogy, very exciting, and yeah, I am still very excited to see what Abercrombie puts out next in this world. I also want to read The Devils, even though I am afraid that it's not gonna be for me because of the humor. But yeah, First Law, still really like it. I think the first trilogy is my favorite though, more than Age of Madness, which is maybe a hot take. But anyways, let's just move on. The next one is Small Gods. So I said that I wanted to read something in the Discworld world, whether that was Men at Arms, which is the second book in the kind of Guards City Watch series. But I did read Small Gods. I also have a short video talking about this, and I really liked this, especially the end and the beginning of the book. This, if you don't know, talks about religion mostly, and faith, and how we choose to believe, and whether or not we choose to believe in certain things, and like not just divine powers, but also institutions, and also in your own self as an individual. I thought it was quite funny, not as funny maybe as Guards, so I was maybe disappointed on the like comedic factor, but it has a couple of moments that just made me laugh so much, and the ending is so iconic. So I can definitely recommend it. I think the middle chunk was a bit slow. There's a part where some characters are wandering in the desert, and I thought that was just like quite boring. I'm sad to say, but overall, I think it was a really good book. I tabbed it, so that was also very fun. Yeah, and I think really fun discussions on like God and believer relationships, and yeah, very funny. The next one that I mentioned is similarly to Joe Abercrombie. It's Malazan, and I wrote that I wanted to finish The Crippled God in 2025. At the time, I had read up to Reaper's Gale, so when I said that, it meant that I had to read the Toll the Hounds, book 8, then Dust of Dreams, and then The Crippled God. So 3 chunkers, and I am very happy to say that I have completed them. I mean, I am in the last chapter of The Crippled God, which is very exciting, or the last book, not the last chapter, but part. So yeah, I have still a couple of weeks left in December, so I'm sure I will be done with it. So I'm just for this checking it off. But yeah, I read these 3 books. Malasan is really hard to talk about. I will make a video about it once I finish The Crippled God, but I am very happy to say that I did read basically these 3 books and I completed another series. So this is also the second big fantasy series that I complete this year. Obviously, The Age of Madness is not as big as Malasan, but that's still 2 completed series, so very excited for that. Um, the next one is The Left Hand of Darkness. This is a book that I had in my shelves. I was really interested in reading Ursula K. Le Guin because she's a queen in the science fiction kind of classic realm. Uh, and I had read The Lathe of Haven by her, and I didn't like it so much. I thought the ideas were very captivating, but just the language was so dry, and I had an issue connecting with the character. Um, and then I decided to do like a 3-way book club with this book, and it was such a good experience. I think it is the right way of reading Left Hand of Darkness because there's so much to discuss and unpack, and I think each person will take different things out of it. There is obviously the well-known conversation about gender, but I think past that, I think there's a lot more than I was not expecting to get out of this book. And even the world building is so fascinating, and how she very clearly creates 2 societies that operate very differently from one another. And I think their thought or belief systems were also interesting to kind of piece together. It's not the focus of the story, but I thought, yeah, I was surprised by that part of like the world building. There are some moments between the 2 main characters that were just so precious, and I feel like Ursula K. Le Guin is the most like underlinable writer. Like you can see, I have so many tabs in sentences that just like stick to me. Um, yeah, what else can I say? I am so glad I gave this a try. I am going to continue reading Le Guin's works. I think The Dispossessed might be the next one that I read. It can for sure be a bit dry at times, but I think that's just her style. But I think at the same time, she is so poetic and has the ability to write kind of truths in very simplistic sentences. There is this chapter where the main character is with in a community of people that have some kind of divination powers. It's I'm not exactly sure if they just take drugs or if they actually have some kind of magic, but it's kind of this fortune teller community. And there are just some kind of sentences that this character drops that just left me like shocked. And yeah, I don't know, I can really recommend reading more of Ursula K. Le Guin's work. Yeah, so another one. And then we have Minnesteatern by Karin Tidbeck. This is a dark fantasy, kind of dark fairy tale book that I received as a gift, and I am very excited to say that I did complete it because I had it in my shelf. I think maybe I got it last. Yeah, actually, I got this as a Christmas present last year, so it's not even been a full year in my shelf, and I completed it. Also, look at the cover. I know I say this every single time, but I love this cover. Yeah, this is a Swedish book about 2 characters that live. They are trapped in this fantastical realm, and you're not exactly sure why they're there, and they are kind of oppressed slash slaves, as many other young people are in this realm. And they are enslaved by adults here, and you try to kind of throughout the story you piece why they are here. And I I'm not sure. I don't think I loved this book. I don't think it was really for me. I think the characters are quite young, and so I think for a younger reader, this would have been um, more fitting. Especially because I mean, not just because characters are young, because you can have young characters that are mature and still have like an impact on adult lives, or like yeah. Um, but the characters were young and were also kind of worried about and thinking about things that I think young people do. So I think that was hard to resonate with. And yeah, I don't know. I think the world was really interesting. There were some creatures that were fascinating, and I wished the book had been longer so that we had time to explore more pieces of this world, or maybe just another book in this same world would be super interesting. But I think the plot itself was not so intriguing to me. But I still recommend this for people who like dark fairy tales. I mean, this is for sure dark. The children in this realm are treated horrendously. Like there is violence towards children, and I don't know if it's because the author is Swedish, and maybe that comes. Maybe she's like pulling from some Nordic mythologies. I'm not sure, but I do think the way she writes is quite dark in the way that violent things happen to characters as if nothing and I think people sometimes don't react so much to that. So this is definitely a dark world. But yeah, I think that is what I take out of it, and I'm glad I read another book in Swedish. So yay me! And that was another read book from my list. Then let's go ahead to and talk about Cloud Cuckoo Land. I am so glad that I finished this book. I have had it in my shelves for a couple of years, maybe 3 or 4 years, and I had always felt so guilty about this because I like 100% bought this based on the cover, and because it was compared to Cloud Atlas, one of my favorite books of all time. And back in the day, I was a very different book buyer, and I was like, that book is great, it looks amazing, and it's compared to one of my favorites, so I'm just gonna get it. I was in the airport, so it was like a perfect thing to get, but I just never got around to it, and I really liked it. I obviously it's not maybe to the level as Cloud Atlas. It's a bit different, but I definitely see kind of the comparison. I mean, just as Cloud Atlas, this tells the story of three different characters that are disconnected completely in time, but they have this sort of connection or connecting thread that puts their stories together towards the end of the novel. I would definitely recommend Cloud Cuckoo Land to those who felt that the way the characters were connected in Cloud Atlas was a bit too loose, a bit too metaphysical, maybe, because in that story the connections are actually quite like simple. Sometimes it's just like a thing of a character that another character interacts with, or a piece of music that someone composed and that gets kind of listened to in the future. So it's how these kind of small things that you do in your life could affect someone in a completely different place in time and space, and which I think is really beautiful. But this one, the connection is way more direct. It's more tangible, and maybe I think this book is quite known, but just in case you don't know, here we're following just three stories. The first one, or chronologically speaking, the first one is in Constantinople, and it's this farmer boy. Well, actually, there's kind of four point of views, but it's three stories. And in this old Constantinople story, you follow two young persons who are one of them is kind of from Constantinople, and the other one is a farmer that is traveling to Constantinople. And it's about the siege of this city, and it's yeah, like this motif of children gets connected because in the second story you have a soldier that is well, you get a bit of like his background, but it's a soldier from the Korean Wars, I think, who is now an old man, and he puts together this play, theatrical play in their local library, and unfortunately the play gets kind of at the same time there is this teenager who has a bomb with him and is basically threatening to detonate the bomb in the library, but he doesn't know that the kids are there. And then the story in the future is a also a kid who is interacting kind of with an AI system. She's in a room alone in this spaceship, and so all of these things get connected very nicely at the end. I think the story about Constantinople was not so interesting to me just because it's more like historical fiction, and it was very beautifully written, but yeah, historical fiction usually doesn't tend to work so well for me in terms of like connecting to the story and the characters. I think the Korean War, or like the story of the old man, uh, hit home much more strongly, and then the story about the future. I mean, it is kind of sci-fi. This author is not a sci-fi author, so do not read this thinking that this will be like super interesting, complicated, or like unique sci-fi concepts. But I think the way he brings that into the story and how he connects that together at the end was really, really cool. So I've talked a lot about this, but this is Cloud Cuckoo Land. um, then I have some other ones that I did not that I finished that I do not have here with me. So let's just go over those. So the next one is Annihilation. This is the first book in the, what is the name of that series? I don't know, by Jeff Vandermeer, and I really liked it. It's this kind of sci-fi eco sci-fi book, a bit like speculative literary. So it's not very like hard fiction. There is like hard science fiction. There are a lot of like vibes in the story, and this is very popular. So I feel like I don't need to explain what it is about, but I will say that I loved, like, especially most of like the start and the middle part were 5 stars for me. I think the eerie environment is so effective. I love the movie, so I did read this after watching the movie. I don't know if that made a an impact on me, or influenced my enjoyment of the story. I think the length of the novel is perfect because it is quite like um, loose sometimes, and so I think having a longer novel would have been to the worst of the experience. So I'm happy that it was so short. I devoured it in like 2 days on a trip. Some of the things that happen at the end are quite interesting, and I do feel like I would have like, interestingly enough, I would like if the sequels followed kind of the same story, which is weird because I know they don't. But there is just so much that I think we could explore, even with the main character and some of the revelations that she makes or finds. So yeah, that was Annihilation. Similarly, I read Semiosis. This is also like an echo science fiction story that did not work for me so well. I talked about this very recently, so I will not say more. But yeah, didn't work for me so well. And that is actually all of the books in my list that I did read. So yay me. I think that's like, what, 11 books? Yeah, 11 books. So 11 out of 15, I think, uh, is really good, I think. So I am happy with that result. So then let's move on to the next books, which are that are on this same list that I definitely plan to read in 2026. So the first one is Moonwitch Spider King by James Marlon James. This is a continuation to Black Leopard Red Wolf, my, I think, favorite book last year. And this is a dark fantasy, epic fantasy work. And I think the second book is one of those projects where part of the book is told, uh, it's like following some of the events of the first book, but told from the perspective of another character or multiple new characters. Um, so I am really looking forward to that. That is one of my number one priorities for 2026. I am so excited to read this. I think I will reread Black Leopard Red Wolf before reading Moonwitch Spider King, just to refresh kind of my love for this story, and because it is quite tricky. Like, some things plot wise are hard to like remember, because you have this main character who is telling his story. He's quite unreliable, and then there's a lot of like jumping in time, and then some of the plot points you are kind of unsure why people are where they are, or why they're doing the things they're doing, and that's something that you kind of like understand throughout the story. But I feel like I need to refresh my mind. um, then we actually, let's bring it. I have the sorry, I have the Spirit Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. This is the author that wrote the Vanished Verse, one of my favorite books in science fiction. And I don't know so much about this story. I just know that it follows two men, and there's something about an empire and I wish I could save more, but at the same time, I am really excited to go into this blind. I think this has been quite popular, and I'm really, really happy for Simon Jimenez, and I'm just glad to read like science fiction by, or actually, this is fantasy. I'm sorry, this is fantasy by BIPOC authors. So yeah, I'm going in super blind. And then the next one is the Three Body Problem. This series doesn't need any introductions. I've had this series in my shelves for a while now, so I think it's just time. I know there's a show, so it would be super fun to watch that as well. But I just know that this is one series that is often in people's favorite sci-fi series of all time, if not like best books of all time. So because it's always so high up there, I am really, really curious about what I will think. I know people describe it as very complicated and very like mind blowing. So those are things that I tend to like. And I read a very, very short excerpt of this story in a short story anthology of Chinese translated works of science fiction some time ago. And it was about this general in like ancient China who built a supercomputer ish with his army and just basically using, soldiers had like flags and he programmed like logic doors or logic gates. I don't know, like I know it sounds super nerdy, but I remember that so much and I was so floored by that idea. So I am really excited. I hope that I like it. Um, and then the last one is The Mountain in the Sea, which is a science fiction story about very, very intelligent octopus. If you know, you know. If you don't, I absolutely hated the Children of Ruin, the continuation to Children of Time, which had basically the same premise. So I think this needs to be the vindication. This needs to be the redemption of the intelligent octopus sci-fi concept. So I am really excited to read that. And then the last two books that, or the last couple of books that were on that list that I will just briefly touch on. I have The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. Also really excited to read that. Just haven't gotten to that. It's also quite chunky. I have The Tainted Cup, which sounds really interesting because of like the echo horror pieces of it. I know it's been compared a bit to Attack on Titan, which I watched like the start of and I enjoyed. So that just sounds like in premise really interesting. And then last but not least, we have the Empire of Silence series by Christopher Rocchio. This has blown in YouTube, I think, at least in my corner of the internet. And this one I'm actually not so enthusiastic about reading it anymore. I think I am a bit afraid that this one like single POV narrative is just not gonna work for me. I also know that this is the story of an heir that probably has like a lot of growth and it's a lot of like politicking, and I mean the premise sounds crazy, right? Like this guy who apparently like destroys a son and doing so like kills millions of people, I think. And I think the story kind of gets you to the point of like understanding or like, yeah, knowing why he does this. So the premise sounds really cool, but I think just the narrative choices of like it's single POV, which usually doesn't work for me, especially in sci-fi and fantasy, and also like an heir kind of privileged dude. I don't know if I am so interested in reading like that story. So let me know. Let me know. I know everyone loves this story, and if you know me, if you kind of have seen my channel for a while, I know what I like. Let me know if you think I would like it. But anyways, this was a long list, but I wanted to go through all of the books that I said were priorities for me in 2025, and I'm really happy to say that I finished like 11 out of the list. I don't know how many they were. And a lot of the ones that I did not read, I actually have and plan on reading very soon. So it's just like I think a smooth continuation into the new year. So yeah, thank you so much and see you on the next video.